Today's lesson is on multiplying decimals. For our first two problems, we're going to multiply and then we're going to use estimation to check the answer. So for number 1, we have 8 1/10 times 5 6/10. First, we're going to set up our problem. 8 1/10 times 5 6/10. When we are writing out our problem, we line up our digits. We don't worry about our decimals. Sometimes the decimal will end up being lined up, but it does not have to be lined up when we are multiplying. So let's go ahead and multiply. 6 times 1 is 6, and 6 times 8 is 48. We do not worry about putting a decimal in this number. We go ahead and do our decimal at the end. So now we can go ahead and do our second row. For our second row, we start with a 0 in the ones place, and then we go ahead and multiply. 5 times 1 is 5, and 5 times 8 is 40. Now we're going to add. 6 plus 0 is 6. 8 plus 5 is 13. We're going to carry our 1. 1 plus 4 is 5, plus 0 is 5. And we don't have anything to add to the 4, so we just have 4. Now we need to figure out where the decimal is going to go. We're going to look at our original problem, and we want to see how many digits we have after the decimals. So for 8 1/10, we have one digit after our decimal. And for 5 6/10, we have one digit after the decimal. We're going to add these decimal places up. So 1 plus 1 is 2. So now to place our decimal, we'll start at the end. So we'll start on the right-hand side, and we'll go up 2 places to the left. So 1, 2, and then we place our decimal. So our answer is 45 36 hundredths. Now we're going to use estimation to check. We want to see if our estimate is close to our exact answer. When we estimate, we'll round to the nearest whole number. So we'll have 8 times 6. And 8 times 6 is 48. 48 and 45 36 hundredths are close. Now let's look at number 2. For number 2, we have 1 785 thousandths times 2/10. When we are writing out our problem, we're going to line up the last digit. We do not worry about our decimals. In the first problem, it just happened that our decimal was lined up. But remember I said we didn't have to line up our decimals. So in this problem, it does not work out that way, and that's okay. So we have 1 785 thousandths times 2/10. We have our numbers lined up at the end, so now we'll go ahead and multiply. 2 times 5 is 10. We're going to carry our 1. 2 times 8 is 16, plus 1 is 17. And then we'll carry our 1. 2 times 7 is 14, plus 1 is 15. Carry our 1. And 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. For our second row, notice that we have a 0 we're going to multiply by. When we multiply anything by 0, we would just get zeros. So we can go ahead and skip this step. We do not need to multiply this 0. So now let's figure out where our decimal is going to go. So for our first number, we have 3 digits after the decimal. 1, 2, 3. And then for 2/10, we have one number after our decimal. So if we add 3 plus 1, we get 4. So we're going to start at the right-hand side, and we're going to move our decimal up 4 places. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that puts it in front of the 3. We can then put a 0 in front of that decimal to hold the place of the ones place. So we're going to have 0 and 3,570 10,000ths. Now let's see if our estimate is close to our exact answer. When we estimate this, we'll round to the nearest whole number. So we'll say that 1 785 thousandths is close to 2. And 2/10 is close to 0. So we'll have 2 times 0 equals 0. And you'll see that our answer of 3,570 10,000ths is close to our estimate of 0. Now we're going to evaluate expressions. We're going to evaluate the expression 3 and 5/10 x for the given value of x. 3 and 5/10 x means that we do 3 and 5/10 times the value for x. For number 3, x is equal to 2 and 41/100. So we're going to take 3 and 5/10 and multiply that by 2 and 41/100. So for our problem, we have 2 and 41/100 times 3 and 5/10. When we write out our problem, we need to line up the last digit we have for each of our numbers, not necessarily the decimal. For this problem, the decimals will not be lined up. So now let's multiply. 5 times 1 is 5. 5 times 4 is 20. We carry our 2. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 2 is 12. Now we can cross out the 5 and the 2 because we've already used them. And we'll start our second row with a 0 in the ones place. Now we're going to multiply this 3. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 4 is 12. We're going to carry our 1. And 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. Now we can add up our rows. 5 plus 0 is 5. 0 plus 3 is 3. 2 plus 2 is 4. And 1 plus 7 is 8. Our last step is to see where our decimal is going to go. If we look at the original problem, we need to look at how many digits we have after the decimals. So for 2 and 41/100, we have a 4 and a 1, which means we have 2 digits after the decimal. And for 3 and 5/10, we just have the 5 after the decimal, or 1 digit. Now we'll add these up. 2 plus 1 is 3, so we have 1, 2, 3 numbers, or 3 digits after our decimal. So we're going to start on the right-hand side or at the end and move our decimal up 3 places. 1, 2, 3. So our decimal is going to be between the 8 and the 4. So our answer is 8 and 435 thousandths. Now for number 4, x equals 7 thousandths. So for our expression 3 and 5/10 x, we're going to do 3 and 5/10 times 7 thousandths. So now we have our problem written out. We have 7 thousandths times 3 and 5/10. Remember, we line up our last digit, not necessarily the decimal. So 5 times 7 is 35. We'll carry our 3. 5 times 0 is 0, plus 3 is 3. 5 times 0 is 0, and 5 times 0 is 0. We can cross out this 5 and this 3, since we've already used them, and we'll start our second row with a 0 in the ones place. Now we'll multiply this 3. 3 times 7 is 21. We're going to carry our 2. 3 times 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. 3 times 0 is 0, and 3 times 0 is 0. Now we need to add up our rows. 5 plus 0 is 5. 3 plus 1 is 4. 0 plus 2 is 2. 0 plus 0 is 0. And then we have nothing here, plus the 0 is 0. Now we need to put our decimal in our answer. So we need to go back to the original problem and see how many digits we have after the decimal. So for 7 thousandths, we have a 0, another 0, and a 7 all after the decimal, or 3 digits after our decimal. For 3 and 5/10, we have just the 5 after the decimal, so 1 digit. Now we add those up. We have 3, 1, 2, 3, plus 1 more is 4. So starting at the right-hand side or at the end, we're going to move our decimal to the left 4 places. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 0.0245, which we say that is 0 and 245 10 thousandths.